Today's video looks to answer an early question. How is the meta of Mortal Kombat 1 shaping up? It has been a few weeks and we've seen a decent amount of tournaments both offline and, to be fair, mostly online right now, which has given us an early look into how the game is looking from a competitive sense. What kind of characters are being picked, what kind of cameos, and more importantly for this video, what kind of strategies and techniques. Because when a game is early, certain things will be more popular than others, and other areas of the game are yet to be truly fleshed out, as players just simply need more time to see things evolve. Now, we have a lot of different characters to cover, and in this case, I'd like to talk about a few players and their results as well. If you are looking to get into competitive level Mortal Kombat 1, hopefully this video helps you just that smallest bit. So let's talk about characters first. Who is proving more popular in a tournament setting? I saw a user on Twitter called LoveCoreFGC gather some early tier lists that players and content creators have put together. One of them includes our own, which to be fair was very much a way too early tier list if you've already seen it. I do personally think the game is too soon to put a conclusive list together. However, early lists can still be good for that initial burst of information and with really how players are currently feeling about everything. An interesting development is that players are in rather common agreement over who the heavy hitters currently are. Characters like Kenshi, Baraka, Johnny Cage, even Raiden is kind of unanimously appearing in that current S tier, with other characters either within the same area or slightly behind. They are the characters like Ashra, like Melina, characters that are a bit trickier to play than the initial burst of S tier, however still have a large amount of depth to them and, of course, their ability to work wonderfully with multiple cameos. But why are so many of these characters considered strong? Removing ease of use, because characters like Kenshi definitely have a learning curve to them from an execution standpoint, I feel like early on in a game's life, if a character hits hard, has mix-up potential, and importantly, is relatively safe, these characters are going to be incredibly strong when the game is still relatively new. Baraka will hit like an absolute truck. Even without Cyrax's cameo, Baraka still hits pretty decent damage. Johnny Cage is going to hit constant combos, a lot of safety on block. In many instances, attacks will be plus on block, retaining the character's turn, and I think Raiden is very much the same thing. Raiden, very early, was seen as a low, higher reward, with the overhead providing a check of sorts, but something that doesn't give as much damage, and now with things like Cyrax's cameo, Raiden is comboing off his overhead, providing a full launch off both options. So if you take a character that has an overhead, a low, an option on block to keep you either uncomfortable or in some cases still guessing, those characters are going to overwhelm you early while everyone's still getting comfortable with their own defensive options. And with safety comes chip damage in the right hands, and that's an extra layer that is enforcing why some characters are so dangerous. If you look at someone like Cage, Baraka, or Raiden, and they're paired with someone like Cyrax's cameo, not only are they relatively safe anyway, but they can now do attacks into Cyrax's helicopter to become either safe or plus, continuing their turn, which continues the block damage that an opponent is taking. Right now, we are seeing some players consistently flawless block offense, but not all the time. And there are some instances where the timing is a bit weird anyway, that you might not be comfortable with. Flawless blocking is something that I personally think will simply evolve as time goes on, because the chip damage right now feels a little bit out of control. It is an interesting discussion though how the chip damage is entirely in the defender's hands, and that is a matter of execution, and all you have to do is look at MK11, where early players were rarely doing flawless block, and if you were watching the final EVO Grand Finals, for example, there were flawless blocks everywhere. That simply is a matter of time, and chip damage is one of those things that could possibly fall off as players get more comfortable. But let's talk about the cameos if we're talking about chip damage. There are no more cameos more extreme for chip damage than Cyrax's cameo, who, if you have been watching tier lists, or just watching players talk about the game, is rather unanimously considered the #1 cameo, mainly because of that, being able to turn anything into helicopter to be safe or plus, for block damage, for pressure, and for meter build. I think it's a no-brainer why many players have started to pair their character with Cyrax. The ability to just turn anything into helicopter is proving extremely useful, both in casual play online and in tournament play for an extremely reliable option. But it's not just Cyrax, we are seeing many competitive players favour the Sub-Zero cameo. The Sub-Zero cameo may seem weaker in comparison to Cyrax, but you have to look at the meta. If a character has many projectiles, is trying to establish a ranged game, projectiles that might lead to damage or in some cases setup if it's Kung Lao's low hat, Sub-Zero's cameo is a direct answer to all of it. And it's not just the projectile immunity that the character gives you, it's going to be the reliable stun from forward cameo. This, after a ground bounce or on the ground for just a basic hit confirm, can expand a combo game greatly, and with some characters that would like to set something up after a stun has landed, it gives them a great amount of utility. And this is the dynamic. Depending on the matchup, Sub-Zero cameo can be incredibly useful. In matchups you don't necessarily need access to the immunity from projectiles, there are other cameos that players are starting to favour. Another cameo like that is going to be Kung Lao. Kung Lao provides great range control, great safety up close thanks to low hat, the ability to hold the low hat for a hard to blockable, as many characters feature an overhead of some capacity. It is starting to develop where, depending on the matchup and depending on the opponent, we are seeing maybe one of these three cameos as a base. Other characters might have specific cameos, but I think across the board, these three are currently the most popular. Now, when it comes to character representation, it's actually a mixture of what you expect versus what you might not have expected. Online and offline has seen its fair share of activity, although I must say online there has been more for the ease of access, and many people just wanting to give players a competitive experience, so huge props for that, I have to say. However, let's look at the characters and players that have been doing well recently. Johnny Cage has been what seems to be the most successful character. If you're looking at players like Pulse online, you're looking at players like Zombat, formerly known as Kombat, Johnny Cage has been incredibly successful with various cameos, but the one I see the most is paired with Cyrax, for obvious reasons at this point. Now that doesn't surprise me. I see a lot of Baraka and Cyrax still in a competitive space. Some players do quite well. Some players kind of reach that maybe top 8, maybe that 5th zone and haven't quite pushed into the next level yet. But in the hands of a really good player, I can't say I'm surprised to see these characters doing well. However, I must say that especially offline, a character I have seen more than you might have expected is Havoc. Don't get me wrong, I've seen Havoc players do wonderful online. 1's Gemini recently won an online tournament with Havoc, defeating Pulse in Grand Finals. But offline at CEO Taku in Florida, which was the first big offline Mortal Kombat tournament, Striker went on to win the entire thing with Havoc, with the Sub-Zero paired as the cameo. We had Beyond Toxin and Parser in that same top 8. And personally, I feel like it was just one of those things where there just so happened to be 3 really good Havoc players at the event. We did see Video Games Yo use a bit of Havoc at the Viennality top 8 in Vienna, but I think this character was going to be good or bad. There was never going to be an in-between, and right now Havoc is looking pretty good. When looking at the tournament footage that you've been watching in this video, one thing reigns true. Offense is incredibly powerful right now. So where does that leave defense? This is an element of the game and the overall meta that I personally believe is going to shift as time progresses. We are only now starting to see players use their cameos defensively. I'm talking about a Kung Lao reversal spin, a Serena reversal flip kick, which personally could actually be the best reversal in the game from a cameo standpoint. And this is something that experience in matchups will teach you. People are not going to instantly look at their defensive options because early in a game's life, offense tends to be the most popular thing. It's the easiest to understand and it's the easiest to grasp. It is only when an offensive meta has been created that defensive options can really be explored, and that's where we could go down the line. I think that the usefulness of a defensive cameo is something that we will see in time. A Scorpion defensive spear, a Serena flip kick, a Kung Lao spin, and who knows what other reversal options could exist with the cameo system, and that is something that I'm personally very excited to see. I think my closing points on this video is that there is still so much to discover. A game with versus mechanics, assist mechanics for those that don't know what I mean by versus, an extra feature, a character you can call in to do an extra move beyond your base fighter. This is the kind of game that is very rarely figured out in week 1, 2, or 3, even month 1, 2, or 3. And this is an exciting time for the game. Players are still exploring. Yes, we're seeing popular combinations, but that makes more sense. As I've said previously on this channel, top-level players going in with stuff that works and is agreed to work is something that you kind of just grow to expect. This is not just a Mortal Kombat exclusive thing. A player wants to compete in a competitive setting where there's money on the line, they're going to go with what everyone knows is good, and if they are good enough to enforce it, why wouldn't they? That doesn't mean that there isn't stuff in the game yet to be uncovered. Look at players that are the absolute highest level and not afraid to experiment. I'm talking about the Sonic Fox, the Ninja Killer, the Foxy Grandpa, those that kind of believe in their own philosophy in the game and let their character and cameo choices expand that. And that is something that you're not going to find all the time. This is the kind of thing that we need to pay close attention to those major offline tournaments. And I gotta say, East Coast Throwdown, merely weeks away in Connecticut, that is the event that I will be keeping a very close eye on, and I suggest you do the same. Will it be much of what we've seen already, or will there be players going in with new strategies and new combinations that we're not going to be ready for? I thank you all extensively for watching this video, and if you enjoy Mortal Kombat, old and new, stick around. There's always more Mortal Kombat where that came from on this channel. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.